Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X Factor number 83, cover dated October 1992. The cover is by Mark Pacella. He's the guest artist for the interior story and inked by Milgrom. The cover caption is Genoshan Legacy, and it looks like Cameron Hodge is somehow back from the dead there and going up against Havoc and Strong Guy. And I think this is a pretty cool cover. It's extremely dynamic. I like the designy use of Havoc's plasma blast power there as well with the concentric circles. Yeah, I think it's a great looking image. It certainly intrigued me back in the day to pick this one out from a newsagent's here in Ireland, and it was my first issue of the X Factor series that I ever picked up. And then of course I went along and got the back issues going back to issue 71 on for this new team, and this marks the beginning of the second year of the new team, debuting previously in an October dated comic of issue 71. Let's open this one up to the splash page. So there are a few full page images in this issue. Mark Pacella kind of in the mold of Rob Liefeld in some ways, but here in this particular comic he's leaning into the aesthetic established on the book by Larry Stroman. So there's some quite designy layouts on the pages, and I think it works really well. The creative team down here for a story entitled Painting the Town are Peter David Ryder, pencils by Mark Pacella, inks by Al Milgrom, colours by Glenn Oliver, and letters by Richard Starkings. So what on earth is going on with this opening? We've got this dragon here. We're looking right into its maw, and it exclaims, "Will you people get out of my face?" So what is happening here? Let's turn the page and we'll get right into the story. The location is New York City, the docks, and this is one of the expatriates from Genosha, and he is exclaiming before a group of TV and newspaper journalists, "You reporters all make me sick, leave us in peace." And Joe Bett says, "Oh, for crying out loud, Lucas, stop it." So this is who was behind the image of the massive dragon. And she says to Lucas, "You didn't have to terrorize them like that, did you?" And his response is interesting. He says, "I was tired of their incessant questions, Joe Beth. How do we feel about this, that, and every other blasted thing? And that name they've hung on us, the Expatriates, an ignorant, moronic pun off X-Men and expatriate. Why should I have to?" And then someone off panel says, "Excuse me," and things get more complicated because here comes Jenny Ransom, a mutate. Well, she didn't go through the whole mutate process in Genosha and last seen during the Extinction Agenda crossovers across New Mutants, Uncanny X-Men, and X Factor, but when X Factor was staffed by the original 5 X-Men. Anyway, she says here as she holds by the hand her boyfriend Philip Monroe, who, remember, is the son of the chief Engineer. She says, "We're from the Genoshan Awareness League. We, like yourselves, are refugees from Genosha, granted asylum by the United States. And Lucas replies, "If they granted you asylum, then why the blazes are they giving us so much trouble? Things have changed for one thing," says Jenny. "America has become very good at encouraging rebellion, but not so good at offering continued support once matters are in motion." So we're getting into quite a political content in this particular issue. It's something that Peter David is interested in exploring in X Factor, but he usually keeps the debate or the discussions fairly balanced, and we'll see how that plays out in this particular issue too. So Jenny, who has asylum in the US, continues and she says, "We hope to alter that attitude. Second, admittedly, Genosha's situation has changed as well, but that still shouldn't invalidate your desire for freedom. And if there are any government reps here, we'd like to talk with them." So Guido says, "They're on the ship. X Factor's leaders, some guy from immigration, the expatriate leaders, all trying to work this out." Jenny says, "We'd like to join them if we can." And Strong Guy replies, "I'll call ahead on my headset. Who do I say you are?" So she gives her name, and then the name that sends Lucas crazy is Philip Moreau, and he recognizes that surname. And of course, we've got a note here too from the editor, Kelly Corvese, who gives us the note for the first appearance of Jenny Ransom, which was all the way back in Uncanny X-Men number 235 from 1987. And like I was saying, you get these very interesting page layouts, designy layouts from Pacella in this issue. For instance, these tall figures of Jenny Ransom in particular, and then standing, so to speak, on the shoulder of Lucas here. I think it's really well done. I think it's interesting work here, and the way that Peter David is scripting the layout, everything flows really nicely, including this little small panel here where we have reverse silhouette for Strong Guy, Jenny, and Philip Moreau. Let's continue with the story though. The scene switches to inside the ship, and inside there is Rain, and she's looking at the mutates here, huddling in fear. I think they're really well drawn there, and the expression on their faces is really well done by Pacella and Milgrom. And Rain says about them, looking at them, it makes her feel ill, but it's not their fault, she says. It's me. It's knowing. And this is a new piece of information from Peter David regarding Rain during his run. She's revealing here in her thoughts that if she ever changes back to fully human, she'll be just as docile and frightened as the mutants, because she was put more or less 100% through the process, but with a backdoor written in by the chief engineer in order to thwart Cameron Hodge. And again, that's a reference back to the Extinction Agenda event series. And then she runs into Sauron, or so it appears. And so she attacks him. You murdering lizard, she exclaims. Again, the layouts here really interesting. The diagonal panel break there as well. And then it turns out it was an illusion cast by this particular mutate. And he says, "Oh, that was pure dead brilliant. You ruined my cold fire sculpture. Didn't the colour tip you off?" And she says, "No, I'm afraid I'm a wee bit colourblind these days." When she transforms into her wolfen mode, that's what we infer there. "You made this statue out of cold fire?" she asks. "And it's all solid? I've never seen the like." So he replies, "It's probably better that you wrecked it. It was terrible anyway." So from his dialect and style of speaking, it sounds like he's Scottish, which is interesting because, of course, Rain is from Ullapool in Scotland. And she replies, "Terrible. So terrible that it fooled me completely is how terrible it was. Who are you? Where are you from?" So he gives his little backstory there. His name is Taylor. He's from Glasgow originally. And he asks her, is she sure that she wants to hear his full story? "Absolutely," she says. Again, it's interesting to me that the layout here to here and over here and down here, this kind of snaking layout works. It reads well. Let's turn the page and continue with the story. So the leaders are in discussion, and you can see that there's a pretty wordy discussion happening. And Val opens by saying to Havoc, "Alex, you're kidding. You can't just take the team and waltz off to Genosha." So that's what he said at the end of the previous issue. And Val continues, "You've responsibilities to me, to the government, and then the mutate leader, the Genoshan mutate leader, I'm trying to remember his name, it's just escaping me, for Prodigal, that's it. Prodigal says, 'The government that is turning its back on us, you think that I'm oblivious to the timing? Why should your leaders in an election year?'" So that's the reminder that this is coming out in the late summer, early autumn of 1992, and it was an election year, and the election that ultimately Bill Clinton won, ending 12 years of Republican holding of the presidency. Anyway, getting back into the story, Prodigal continues and he says, "In an election year, want to alienate an anti-mutant electorate by extending the hand of welcome to a shipload of them?" So I've said it before that Peter David writes both Incredible Hulk and X-Factor in this era and aims it to intelligent teenagers of anywhere between 14 and 17 years old, is my reading of this. Now, I can read it as an adult and still enjoy it, but I just have the feeling that the model reader for this is the intelligent 14 to 17-year-old teenager. Let me know what you think about that in the comment section. I just feel that when I go and I read Chris Claremont's work from the late 80s, that he's writing that bit more for an adult reader, especially in the period when the X-Men are scattered all over the world. He's pitching that work. It's so subtle and sophisticated that it really stands up extremely well to an adult reader. And there's that difference between what Claremont was doing at the end of a 16-year run and what Peter David is doing here. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section. I'll get back into the story now. So Havoc says, we have a bit of an impasse, Val, because Prodigal here isn't ready to believe that Genosha is safe. I can't say I blame him. And Val replies, look, Prodigal, I can understand why you and the expatriates are thinking this way. I can understand what you've been through. And then he responds, unless you're a mutant, you can't know. And Quicksilver chimes in. So Quicksilver has been there listening to everything, and he's got a perspective. And it's an interesting one. He says he's right, Val. Cooper, you cannot comprehend being envied and feared by mankind because of the circumstances of your birth. But this is what I was saying about excuse me, Peter David keeping the discussion and the debate balanced. He gives Val some good lines here when she comes back and she says, you know something, Pietro? I'm getting sick and tired of you guys going around like you've some sort of lock on suffering. Where do you get off acting as if the only way someone can understand your pain is if they've endured the same indignities you have? Pain is pain, Quicksilver, and some things are universal enough too. But her speech is interrupted, the discussion is interrupted. She was attacking the idea of maybe what would be called today lived experience. And Havoc interrupts. He says, hold it, we have a problem out in the dock, people. And that's because Strong Guy is radioed in with this big fight that's taking place. So like I said, there's a number of these full page images throughout the issue, and I think they're all really cool. This one is amazing. I think that Pacella does a really good job on Cameron Hodge there, and in a cyborg version, it's wild. Look how wide his mouth is opening. It makes me think he would have been a great artist to have done the New Mutants chapters of Extinction Agenda, because Rob Liefeld wasn't able to give those his full attention. And you can see too that Pacella's pretty proud of this page, because he signed it down here with his initials, and Al Milgrom too, which prompts me to say that I think, Al Milgrom is an inker whose work is kind of rough and loose very often, and it doesn't work with certain pencilers. Certainly Rob Liefeld, when he was paired with Al Milgrom, didn't enjoy the experience and doesn't think that Milgrom was an inker that anyone of his grouping in Marvel in the late 80s, early 90s enjoyed having assigned to ink their pencils. But I think that Al Milgrom does a really good job over Pacella's pencils. And my feeling is that Pacella, who'd done some issues of X-Force after Liefeld was fired from the book, and was inked over by Dan Panosian, I feel that Milgrom's inks over Pacella here are superior to those of Panosian over Pacella on those X-Force issues that came out just before this. Let me know what you think about that in the comments section. So anyway, this of course isn't Cameron Hodge, rather it is Lucas. And Jenny says here, will you knock it off please, this isn't accomplishing anything. And there's a joke here referencing previous issue of the title where Strong Guy says, if I enjoyed pointless fight exercises, I wouldn't have rigged the doorknob on the danger room so it fell off. And then Jo Beth, one of the expatriates, attacks her own fellow. Lucas, that's enough, she says. Put him down right now. And he whips her away with one of those tentacles. Get away, Jo Beth. This is between me and this walking son of a pustule. What a great insult. And then he grabs Philip Moreau there and says to him, looming over him, "Your mind's open to me, boy. I know your most terrifying memories, and the knowledge gives me form." So that's why he's taken on the shape of Cameron Hodge, and that's how his mutant power works. And he continues and he says, "Let's see if, between the two of us, we can make some even more horrifying memories, eh?" So what a threat. And again, this is another one of these very designy layouts on this particular page. It's really interesting to look at. I mean, obviously not anatomically correct here. Look at the length of Joe Beth's legs there, really pushing the aesthetic, Mark Pacella, but I think it works well. It's visually appealing. Let's continue with the story. And this is another great page, fantastic page here, where Havoc arrives and he breaks everything up. "Everybody clear," he exclaims. "I'm ending this little hate parade right now." So he unleashes a plasma blast, and that gives us the moment from the cover, really. And yeah, it's great. Such a great page. Great pose there on Havoc. Really does remind me of Larry Stroman. So it has me thinking that Pacella studied the Stroman issues of the comic before taking on this assignment. And he's giving some of that aesthetic in his work, and I think it really works well. Like, just look at the way that Havoc's foot there is rendered. That's very Stroman-esque. And again, more of these kind of open silhouettes to be coloured in by Glynis Oliver. Works really well. And Pacella proud of this page, signing it, and Al Milgrom too. I wonder who owns the original art for this. So, what's the aftermath of this fight? Prodigal arrives and he asks, "Lucas, are you hurt?" "Yes," replies Lucas. "Good," says Prodigal. "Now apologise to the young man, Lucas." And Lucas won't. And Philip here is pretty magnanimous. He says, "It's okay. I understand, really. If I were in your situation, I'd probably strike out at the most convenient target too." And Madrox says, "You know what? I think everybody's on edge. After you guys were cooped up on that ship for so long, I think the best thing you could do is just get out and about for a while. We could show you around New York. Learn that America knows how to treat guests." Prodigal is intrigued. "I must admit, it would be a pleasant change from the hostility we normally meet." And Havoc, with a smile on his face, says, "It sounds fine for me, but you know who it's not fine to? The government representatives, Val Cooper first of all, and this other guy, Coswell, from immigration. These people are in the country illegally," he says. "They have no passports, no permission to enter, nothing." Let's turn the page. Again, look at the layouts here, the design. 3 vertical panels with confident use of negative space on the page. The screen door effect there, that was a staple of Rob Liefeld's Bag of Tricks. And of course, like one of the panels, the center panel being borderless as well. I think it works really well. I also see a little touch of Greg Capullo on Havoc's face there. And again, confidence with another full page image, which Pacella has signed there on the what would you call that? Like the stand for the stop sign. So you can just see his name there, like it's a graffiti. And it seems like Al Milgrom didn't spot that, unless he's signed just under stop and it's obscured by the speech balloon. But back into the story, we have the debate there between Havoc and the 2 government agents. He says, "Believe me, Val, if you try to tell me to chop these people off at the knees, to beat the living daylights out of them, then I'll resign as X Factor's leader. And I have a sneaking suspicion most of the team will go with me, which leaves you and Coswell here to manage the expatriates yourselves. If you think you can rein them in, be my guest. But if you'll give us some latitude, then I'll personally assure you none of them will be unescorted. They won't cause any trouble, I promise." And Val says, "Basically, you're blackmailing me." And he replies, "No, just forcing you." So she agrees. Coswell doesn't agree. It's not fine. But Val outranks him and she says, "Shut up, Coswell. So help me God, Alex. You keep this quiet and low key. If these people cause any trouble, then there's going to be hell to pay. And it'll be on your credit card. Get it?" "Got it," he says. "Good," she concludes. And we, the readers, know that of course there's going to be trouble. And so, but I really like the way that Pacella has handled this full page scene as everybody walks off the docks into Manhattan. So we've got little corners where certain members of X Factor have paired up with some of the expatriates. So Rain here with Taylor, and Strong Guy is flirting with Joe Beth. And then we've got in the middle like a funny little pairing here of Lorna, Alex, and Prodigal, where Lorna says, so what sort of things are you interested in besides pontificating? I mean, that made me laugh when I read through this before making the video. And Prodigal replies, actually, there's something very specific that I'd like to see. So they've come to America for freedom and liberty, having left the slave state of Genosha. Where do you suppose it might be that he wants to go? Well, we'll see shortly. So here we've got Lucas and Quicksilver who are paired up, and Lucas says to Quicksilver, so why aren't you exchanging pleasantries and talking about sightseeing? Quicksilver responds, because I'm unpleasant and I don't like sights. That also made me laugh. And Lucas replies, you think you have reasons to be bitter? How about this then? I had a sister who, knowing escape was impossible, killed herself rather than be taken as a mutate. How does your unpleasantness compare to that? And Quicksilver doesn't bat an eyelid. He says, come with me and I'll tell you about it. And Madrox takes the younger mutates for a bit of fun in the city. And let's continue with the story. But there's a kind of like an interlude, cutaway comic scene. This is, what's this guy's name again? He is a Chalker brother. So we saw before Vic Chalker and these comic interludes where he was coming up with villainous schemes in order to kill mutants, and they always backfired on him, and the last one he ended up dead. And here's his brother now, and he's transformed himself into, and this is like a kind of a parody of a 60s villain, #1 fan, and then he can't get out of the laboratory that he's in, and he says, I'm stuck in here, this can't be happening, I'm such an idiot. And then he hits himself in the head with his razor sharp, what would you call them, appendages, and he kills himself. So you can have a read of that if you want, if you're watching it in high definition. It's funny, but then we're back into the main story. So Jamie's with the young mutates at a playground in one of the parks, and then he hears music. That music, it can't be, is that? And he's thinking, of course, of Rhapsody from a few issues ago, the woman that he fell in love with and that he broke up with. And it's just an old man with his dog playing the violin, and he drops some coins in his mug, and then this is a really great image here of him shedding a tear. It's really well done because, of course, Madrox is usually an upbeat, jokey kind of guy. This little scene, nobody else is aware of it from the team. Really well handled. And again, I like the aesthetic here. I like the color hold in the background for the chain link fence. I like the use of the screen tone as well by Milgrom. This is a really well done issue aesthetically. Let's continue. We've got Quicksilver and Lucas, and they run into a bunch of street toughs, and one of them says to Quicksilver, hey Silverhead, you're that mutant guy, aren't you? And Quicksilver responds, mutant guy, how did Guido miss that one? And the street tough says, I hear mutants are supposed to be superior. Me, I think you're overrated. So the guy's looking for a fight, and Quicksilver holds Lucas back. He says to him quietly, softly Lucas, don't play their game, let's play our own. So Quicksilver says to the guy with the gold tooth, who's the fastest elbow in this room? That would be me, says the guy. All right, 2 mugs of beer, I race you, loser buys for the house. Oh yeah, so they're in a pub, probably, where would it be? Where could it be? Probably in Hell's Kitchen of 1992. And the guy says, you're on. So again, I really like this sequence too. I think the storytelling is really well done. So Quicksilver and the guy are racing to down the beer in one, and the guy wins apparently. So how could that be? And Quicksilver clinks empty glasses with the guy. He says, I've been beaten by the better man. Gentlemen, drinks are on me. And Lucas there is bemused. And then the scene switches to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's an interesting external establishing shot. And inside in the Egyptian wing, we have Rain and Madrox. So one of Madrox's dupes has accompanied her and Taylor's looking out towards the park, Central Park. And Rain is wondering why Madrox has accompanied her, and Madrox kind of diplomatically says, I've always liked this museum, and Rain isn't buying it. You kind of lied to me, Jamie Madrox, she retorts. Alex or Lorna told you to come along with us. They figured I might get into trouble if left to my own devices. And Jamie says, well, they just wanted to play it safe. And she replies, I can play it safe just fine. Thank you. And I resent the implication that I kind keep an eye on Taylor myself. And then, of course, while they're arguing, he goes missing. We've got to find him fast, she says. He cannot just be wandering around at liberty. Now, interesting things going on this page. The screen tone here used to show the reflection of the trees from Central Park on the glass of the window. And also the fact that Pacella Xeroxes this panel down here, but changes the heads on Rain and Madrox. And of course, removes Taylor from the bottom of the panel, but otherwise it's the same. It's been Xeroxed. Intriguing stuff. Let's continue, get past the advertisement there. And yeah, where was it that Prodigal wanted to go? Did you guess right? Of course, the Statue of Liberty. He's got a big smile on his face and he says, now this is America. And Lorna replies, Prodigal, where's Alex? So another little comic bit here. But it kind of doesn't make sense. I mean, Alex is super fit, so he's struggling to get up the stairs. It kind of doesn't, it doesn't persuade. It's just for comedy. But again, this is a very nice page here as well by Pacella and Milgrom. The side profile shot of Lorna there, it always reminded me of Jim Lee. And I wonder, is that what Pacella was looking at? Also, there's something about this upshot of Prodigal that reminds me a little bit of Jim Lee's Mall. And yeah, it's intriguing. I wouldn't say it's a swipe or this is a swipe, but I think that Pacella was looking at a number of different artists' work at the time. Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Larry Stroman, and so on and so forth. And then where did Guido and Joe Beth go? Well, they went to a disco club and they're having fun there. And that's pretty cool. So, and again, another interesting design on the page as well. And little use of a screen tone too. And Glynis Oliver going wild with the disco colours as well. And then what about back at the bar, the dive bar? That's it for the money, Lucas. I think it's time we left, says Quicksilver. And the street tough with the golden tooth says, hey, hold up, Pietro. You bought 8 rounds for the house. You're okay. Hey, everybody, this round's on me. So he goes for his wallet, but there's nothing in it. It's empty. And Quicksilver says, I spent the money. So the guy's enraged, and Quicksilver explains here. So Quicksilver might have gone about dealing with Golden Tooth, I'll call him, like with a softly approach, but there's a sting in the tail. He says here with his eyes narrowed, I spent it before I bought the first round. I lifted your wallet, removed the money, and put the wallet back. You'd have spent it all on booze anyway. Besides, you certainly didn't think I'd spend any of my money on the likes of you. So the guy is absolutely enraged there. You can see practically the veins popping on his head. You creep, he explodes, and then Quicksilver's heading off with Lucas leaving a flame track in his wake. That was nasty, petty, and vindictive, says Lucas. And I loved every minute of it. And here's the waitress. That'll be $58 for the round you just bought. Will you take a check, says the guy, after he's fallen over and smashed on the table to the ground. So you have to pay for that as well. It's a funny scene. I think it's well done. And again, look at the use of the screen tone here for designy effect by Milgrom. That's what I'm saying about the pairing and collaboration of Milgrom and Pacella. I think a good pairing and superior, as I was saying, to the pairing with Dan Panosian, who was very young at the time in 1992 as an inker. So then what has Taylor done? Well, he's gone into the park and he's fashioning one of his coal fire sculptures, but he runs into some bigots because the story requires it. They tell him to leave and he pushes back. Prodigal said, this is the country where you go wherever you want. He says, you cannot make me. So the guy somehow has a baseball bat and he starts beating Taylor with it, and one of his friends gets involved too. You can see the glasses go flying there. We've got the sequence in silhouette, and Rain arrives, Madrox too. Madrox says, Rain, don't move him, I'll get an ambulance and we'll round up the creeps who did this. Stay here, keep him warm. And then this is a really interesting, by the way, I just want to comment also on the conjunction of the guy swinging the bat. So he's swinging it here, and then it connects right over the back of Taylor's head, and that's represented on the end of the bat. I think that's all very well done by Pacella. I think he's got a really good visual imagination and an interesting designy style of comic storytelling that works really well. And then there's the last page, last full page image. Interesting choice here to have the big, thick, black border. Even though it's daytime, Glynis Oliver has chosen a cool blue and kind of magenta purple here to convey the emotion of this moment where Rain here is crying. She says, keep him warm, oh dear God, Taylor, because how on earth is he going to have survived that beating that he's just taken? And then, like out of the blue, next the Executioner's song begins. You must read Uncanny X-Men number 294 before joining us here next month. And this got on Peter David's goat. He was not a fan of how Executioner's song interrupted the story he was building here with the expatriates in New York and the proposed trip back to Genosha. And you can find already on the channel my reviews of issues 84, 85 and 86. Indeed, all of the issues involved in the Executioner's song, as well as issue 87 of X Factor. So they're all there in the back catalogue. And my next review of the title will be of X Factor 88, maybe next week or the week after. So one page of letters here. And there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X Factor number 83. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments section. Your thoughts on Pacella and Al Milgrom's collaboration and the very designy layouts in this particular issue. And if you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.